Well, welcome back. This presentation is the third presentation of Chapter 9, Participation, Campaigns, and Elections. Let's jump in. We're going to talk a little bit about, again, the rules, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how campaigns organize and what are the key components of a typical campaign, especially at the federal level. So presidential elections, presidents and vice presidents are the only elected officials that are at least putatively elected by all Americans, and they're subject to unique rules. The nomination phase of the presidential campaign is controlled by primaries and caucuses, with Iowa and New Hampshire playing an outsized role. In my opinion, that's unfair, and I think we ought to basically set the rules so that we have regional primaries, like 6 different regions, and each region would go first and be last. They'd have an equal opportunity to rotate and be first and last. Aspiring candidates have to win a majority of party delegates at the National Party Convention. For the 2024 cycle, that has already been determined as I speak in late March. Both parties know who their candidates will be. This is probably the earliest that we've had both candidates determined in a presidential cycle. Ordinarily, even when you've got an incumbent running like Biden, where the incumbent is eligible to run for a second term, usually the challengers take a little bit longer. The fact that Trump, as former president, is insisting on running has basically cleared that field. So this is kind of a unique presidential cycle. The party conventions basically establish the platform and the appeal to the electorate at large. That's the point at which you're basically looking in a general election to try and identify some middle ground so that you can attract, again, a majority of votes. To win the presidency, candidates have to win the right combination of statewide elections in order to secure a majority of electoral college votes. And again, the electoral college consists of electors that are the combined total of the House and the Senate, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So each state gets that combined number there, the number of members in the House plus 2. And to get a clear majority in the Electoral College is 270 Electoral College votes. So what you're seeing is, in a presidential election, is a race to 270 Electoral College votes. Election campaigns, again, there are a variety of different strategies that you can use. We're going to talk a little bit about those. Election campaigns are a marathon, especially presidential elections. The campaign process is incredibly complex. It requires enormous sums of money. And that means that presidential campaigns oftentimes begin nearly 2 years before the November election. The campaign process often begins with the formation of an exploratory committee to identify supporters and raise funds. One of the typical signals that you'll see with guys that are thinking, people that are thinking about running for president, is they start, maybe 2, even 3 years out, they start spending a lot of time in New Hampshire and Iowa. That's people that are politicians that are spending a lot of time in those states. Generally, that kind of betrays the fact that they are thinking about it. All serious presidential contenders engage the services of professional campaign consultants. Usually you have a staff of advisors. Sometimes it's more hierarchical than others. You need fundraisers as well, because again, even for people like Donald Trump that are independently wealthy, it takes billions of dollars these days to run. And Donald Trump never really relied on his own money. Among the specialized tasks that consultants have include campaign managers, media consultants, pollsters, data analytics teams, financial advisors, a press spokesperson, and staff directors to coordinate volunteer and paid staff activities. Candidates generally begin fundraising long before they ever get to an election. Elections for federal office are incredibly expensive. Most professionals believe minimally funded candidates for the House of Representatives, you need to raise around $1 million. In 2014, candidates in the most competitive House races spent upwards of $10 million or more. In 2020 congressional races, candidates spent a record $7.2 billion, which was a significant increase from the $5.9 billion that was spent in 2018. So once elected, members of Congress enjoy significant advantages in raising funds and typically outspend their challengers. This is one of the critical, what we call incumbency advantages that we'll be talking about when we get to Congress. Campaigns often go to the biggest spenders. In 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama raised and spent more than his Republican challengers, John McCain and Mitt Romney. In 2020 and 2022, the total cost of the 2020 presidential and congressional races was an unprecedented $14 billion. And the 2022 midterm elections cost in excess of $8.9 billion, which again is that's an unfathomable amount of money. Sources of funding: under federal law, individuals may donate up to $2,800 per candidate per election, and $5,000 per federal PAC per calendar year, $35,000 per national party committee per calendar year, and $10,000 to state and local committees per calendar year. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign raised $231 million in individual contributions, 58% of which was comprised of small contributions under $200. He was fond of making that a part of his campaign stump speech, where he said the average donation was $30. Political action committees, otherwise known as PACs, are organized, and these are organizations established by corporations, labor unions, or advocacy groups to channel money into political campaigns. Many states have bans on labor unions and corporations, directly spending money on campaigns. Under the Federal Election Campaign Act, PACs can make larger contributions to any given candidate than individuals can make. Today, congressional and party leaders have leadership PACs to support political allies. And again, part of the way you get to leadership is by helping getting people elected. That instills a sense of personal loyalty in people and kind of helps set the hierarchy within Congress. Soft money and outside spending is a big thing these days. Soft money is basically unregulated contributions to the national parties that are formally designated as party building or voter registration efforts. 2002 reforms were designed to ban soft money by prohibiting national parties from receiving contributions from corporations, unions, or individuals. The 2002 reforms didn't have that intended effect. Supreme Court decisions opened the door for what are known as super PACs, 527s, and 501c4 dark money committees. 527 committees are established specifically for the purpose of political advocacy, and they're required to report their sources to the IRS. 501c4 committees are not required to disclose where they get their funds from, or exactly what it does with them. Again, that's, in my view, deeply problematical and opens the door to foreign governments being able to manipulate our elections. As a result of the Supreme Court's decision in Buckley v. Vallejo in 1976, the court ruled basically that money is speech, and individuals can expend unlimited amounts of their own money in campaigns. And what that has meant is that, again, you're seeing a lot of self-funding where billionaires are oftentimes, the folks that decide to run. We can talk about that at another point. Campaign strategies. Campaigns can adopt retail or wholesale strategies. A retail strategy is where you're looking to build from the bottom up. You're spending a lot of time trying to create face-to-face kinds of interactions. Wholesale is basically meaning you're going basically on television, spending a lot of money, creating very slick ads, And again, oftentimes it's the candidates with the money that can get on air, and that confers a certain advantage on them because people that, Americans oftentimes implicitly think that people that are on TV are more important than people that they don't see on TV. So all campaigns confront basic strategic questions. What is the main message? How should available resources be allocated? Which voters do we want to target? You oftentimes see candidates fumble when they're directly asked, why do you want to be, senator? Why do you want to be president? If you don't have an answer for that question, then, it raises questions about what you're doing. So at the presidential level, the Electoral College, again, dictates that campaigns concentrate on a discrete number of battleground states. So, what are battleground states? These are states that are, competitive, what we might call purple states. Again, the most populous of the battleground states include Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. When you think of the big four, the four largest populous states, California, Texas, New York, and Florida, those are not always competitive. New York and California are pretty much solidly Democratic. Texas and Florida, Texas is solidly Republican, and Florida has only rarely gone for Democrats. And again, the reason for that is Republicans understand they cannot afford under the Electoral College to lose Florida. Florida and Ohio are states where Republicans have done everything they could do within the rules and to some extent, beyond the rules to prevent, Democrats from being competitive. In 2016, 94% of presidential campaign events occurred in 12 battleground states. Safe states are oftentimes just ignored entirely by presidential campaigns. If you're Donald Trump and you have to defend Texas, you've got big problems. Likewise, in 2016, Hillary Clinton didn't bother to campaign in California or Oklahoma because on the one hand, she had no opportunity to win Oklahoma. And on the other hand, again, she knew she was going to win California. The media, again, television advertising is central to modern political campaigns. Campaigns can decide to run, predominantly positive advertisements and focus on why the candidate is the right person for the job, or they can choose to go negative. And oftentimes, again, the negative campaigning can have a double effect. On the one hand, you're making the case for why this other person is not suited for a elected office. And you're also, to some extent, you may engage in suppressing the vote somewhat. Ugly, bruising campaigns oftentimes are low turnout affairs where voters effectively say, via Shakespeare, a pox on both your houses, and they don't show up. And one party, Republicans, frankly, disproportionately benefit from low turnout elections. So, again, while voters consistently claim to reject negative advertising, at times negative ads can work better than positive advertisements. A growing amount of campaigning takes place outside of the campaign in the form of political party support and interest groups. And again, that creates an environment, a significant reason why campaigning is taking place outside of candidates' control is the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United versus the FEC, Federal Election Commission, 2010, which struck down limits on campaign contributions and opened the door to the formation of super PACs to advocate for or against candidates so long as the super PACs are independent of the campaigns, of the candidates' campaigns. So some candidates derive a disproportionate benefit from the media. An example of that, of course, is Donald Trump in 2016. A lot of people felt like he got a lot of free media from his controversial statements and tweets, and that actually worked to his advantage. Digital media is another powerful tool available to modern campaigns. Every competent campaign today develops a social media strategy. for getting, again, drawing eyes, and for fundraising, for mobilizing supporters, and for getting out the vote. Micro-targeting and polling, media coverage, advertising, and televised debates allow candidates to communicate their policy goals and promises widely, but these are kind of blunt tools. Micro-targeting allows campaigns to modulate their message to appeal to specific groups of voters. The 2000 campaign of George W. Bush was the first to employ such micro-targeting strategies. The Obama 2008 and 2012 presidential campaigns set the standard for the sophisticated use of big data to make targeted appeals to specific groups of voters. People power remains critical in modern campaigns because face-to-face contact remains the most effective and direct way of addressing people that you can look them in the eye and tell them that you think that you're the candidate for them. Those are the folks that are most likely to actually stay loyal and to vote for that candidate. Mobilization, Americans are much more likely to participate when someone asks them. Research on political mobilization has shown that face-to-face interactions by a canvasser greatly increases the likelihood of that person, that the contacted person will vote. Face-to-face contact increased the likelihood of voting by 10%, while direct mail increased the likelihood of voting by only around 5%. Robocalls or pre-recorded messages had no measurable effect on turnout. Again, social media networks appear to approach the effect of face-to-face communication. A study involving 61 million users of Facebook found that election appeals from Facebook friends were responsible for increasing turnout by 340,000 people who otherwise indicated they wouldn't have voted. So people that are people that they know, oftentimes have the most influence on getting people to vote. The two parties have engaged in a competitive race to better mobilize their voters. In 2004, George W. Bush was able to train 1.4 million volunteers to make calls and go door to door to register voters, write letters, and create pro-Bush blogs and phone banks to call into local radio call-in shows. In 2008, Barack Obama's campaign made mobilization a centerpiece of its strategy. And of course, Obama was a community organizer. His campaign organized a base of volunteers to go door to door, seeking support for their candidate. Many of Obama's critical primary victories relied on direct voter mobilization. The 2016 to 2020 campaigns shifted heavily to social media as a primary vehicle for mobilizing voters, both again because it's a little bit more cost effective. Both the Trump and Biden campaigns adopted radically different mobilization strategies in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden, I think, kept a lot of people away. A lot of people accused Biden of running his campaign from his basement or whatever, and Republicans, braved the COVID, the COVID pandemic much more aggressively, and they were repaid by increased turnout in a lot of critical areas that helped them in places like Texas and Florida. So that's it for this presentation. When we come back, we will conclude with our final presentation of campaigns, voting, and elections. I'll see you next time.